Before we move on to the event, I will give a short introduction on Hari, our moderator for today, and then I'll hand it over to him. Hari is a corporate board member, serial entrepreneur, venture and angel investor, and mentor. He is currently the executive chairman of the Encore Group, set up in 2010. He's also the chairman and mentor of OS Apps, the creator of Indus OS and Indus App Bazaar. He's also the chairman of PAN IIT Alumni Reach for India. It's a unique non-for-profit organization providing employment guaranteed, loan-funded vocational training to underprivileged youth across rural India. So without any further ado, Hari, handing over to you.
Thank you, Fiza, and good afternoon, everybody. It's exciting, lineup this evening. Today we have two incredible women entrepreneurs who have practically changed the way you can look at entrepreneurship in the region. I say that because what you've done, I call them incredible because it's tough to understand how so much can be achieved in such a short time, and in such different areas as well. So to introduce first Mona Ataya, Mona, founder of mumsworld.com, and Mona, she's proven to be one of the most prominent, successful female entrepreneurs in the region, and a transformational leader. She always questions the status quo and has disrupted the ecosystem by founding Mums World as perhaps one of the earliest category-specific e-commerce companies in the region, at a time when category-specific e-commerce is just about, if I recollect, Faraz, my good friend, set up Manamshi a year earlier in 2010, and this is probably the second one and first by a woman entrepreneur. So that is a great start, Mona, to an entrepreneurial journey. And today they have 2.5 million mothers who are their customers, and over 250,000 products, and present in more than 3 different countries. And first, congratulations on the recent exit you have provided to investors, and I understand you will continue as a CEO and continue to run the business as well. So that's a great way to go on to the next stage of the process of value creation, value building, and discovering value for all your customers and your stakeholders. Saima Khan, I know she's a multitasking specialist, if I can call her that. She just when you think she's about on top of something, she quits that and goes on to the next one. She's a serial entrepreneur, angel investor, and has successfully built several businesses in multiple countries. The first stage of success was in 1995, when the multi-brand luxury boutique that she set up in the US she sold that, and with that she created a investment arm that started to. I know Cheeky Monkey a little bit because I have a grandson with whom I've gone and played there myself. So very, very personal experience at this stage. So it keeps me young as well. So it's perhaps the very first soft play experience, as they call it, for children in the region, and has now grown across 22 locations internationally. And more recently, she set up a cosmetics brand for citizens called CTZN, the Citizen brand, and which is launched in the US. We will talk about that as we go forward. So welcome to the show, and welcome to this afternoon's hour of sharing your experiences, your story. And the whole idea of this is to, our audience primarily are entrepreneurs, and we'll just do a quick poll to understand today's audience in particular. And can we have the first poll, Cicely, officer? Right. So what kind of, we want to know what profile it is. What is your profile? Are you an aspiring entrepreneur? You've been in the business, size, where are you in this? So can we see the results very quickly? Typically, we have a nice mix of both aspiring entrepreneurs and existing startup CEOs, as well as executives from businesses. Let's see what it turns out. Yeah, so we have 35% small business, 8% startups, and aspiring entrepreneurs as well. So that's a great start. So we will walk you through your journeys and enable you to understand what drove you to do various things. To start with, Mona, what made you start Mums World? What was the beginning of this whole journey?
So good afternoon. You said welcome to the show, because we feel like we're in a show all the time.
Exactly.
a front and center show. So I've been an entrepreneur in the Middle East region for 2 decades now, I have to admit. The Mums World business plan was written while I was at Bait.com, which was my first founding venture. And the Mums World business was written behind 2 real drivers. The first driver was e-commerce. E-commerce was and remains the biggest trend of the decade. At the time, it was a $1.6 trillion industry globally, growing at 29% CAGR. It was really reshaping the way consumers transacted with brands. So e-commerce was changing the retail landscape on one side. On the other side, there were a lot of unmet consumer needs for the mother consumer, specifically in this part of the world, that no one was addressing. I was a mother myself, so I was experiencing them firsthand. Access to quality choice of products was limited. Prices were very high. In a transparent world, it was very evident that this part of the world was priced a lot more than the rest of the world. For it was non-existent. Access to the products when you want them in a highly fragmented, proliferated region was also difficult. So we set out to solve these consumer challenges through e-commerce, and the objective was to build a best-in-class e-commerce vertical that would empower mothers in the region to make the most informed decisions for their children, and ultimately becoming an indispensable online extension of a mother's life in the Arab world.
Why mothers?
So that's a great question. I've been asked that many times. So look, parents, both fathers and mothers, shop for their children. They're both actively involved and equally involved. But the mother, we say, is that a kind of litmus test and the gateway into the household. So while the mother and father are equally important, that gateway into the household is really the mother. Today, and she is that litmus test. Now, having said that, half of our demographic on Mums World is also the father or the grandfather or the uncle, etc.
Right.
But you heard what works for the mother works for everyone. Well, you keep a mommy happy, you keep everybody happy.
Yeah, and that brings in Saima. Saima, you're a mother of 4, right?
Well, collectively, I'm a mother of 6. I have 4 children, and then I have 2 stepchildren. So
Wow.
we have a bit of a
And
Brady bunch.
is there a link between that and what made Cheeky Monkey happen?
I always joke that it was actually cheaper for me to set up a play area across the street from my house than to actually keep all the kids at home.
Absolutely,
so, yeah,
absolutely.
That was a big part of my entrepreneurial journey, was when I starting having babies and I had 2 sets of kids, 2 generations apart. I noticed a huge difference in child rearing had changed. So my kids have a 14-year age gap, and my second set of kids I realized were your technology advanced, screen addicted children. And I was really feeling that there was a gap in the market for activities and places for children to go in climates, extreme climates like in the UAE, where the kids can go to a zone where there's no battery operated toys or screens. So that was how the idea of Cheeky Monkeys came up.
So would you say that a very, very domestic issue gave you a great insight to start a new business and spread that and solve that for many, many other mothers as well?
Thank you. I would like to think so. Absolutely. And the beautiful thing that's kind of developed out of Cheeky Monkeys is that I realized that in an expat community, there's been a high develop and make friends if their children wanted to be a part of a community. So we were really fortunate that I would consider ourselves the first movers in the region for developing, a bit of a sanctuary where kids could come and they could play, they could learn, they could celebrate. Mothers could sit there, fathers could sit there for hours at a time and still do.
And grandfathers as well. I've done that myself, so I can tell you that. Yes. And so Saima, you told me earlier that you brought in investor into your cap table very early in the game and
Yes.
gave them majority. One of the questions that entrepreneurs very often ask, they come to a stage in their journeys where they know that they need something more to get to where they want to get, right? And when they go out and look for funding, they get opportunities from more strategic investors very often, and sometimes really from financial investors who want to take a majority stake.
Yes.
And a majority stake on your cap table is not something most entrepreneurs are very comfortable with. So I want to understand from you, how did you make that move and how has it worked out for you to have a majority investor own majority of your company? Did it give you the sufficient amount of freedom to do what you wanted? Did it have a shift? Did you have to change the way you worked in the company after that? What happened? Tell us a little bit about that.
So it was a very daunting decision. And I think I had many sleepless nights, my partner and myself, thinking every step of the way, are we doing the right thing? So we were fortunate. In 2012, we launched Cheeky Monkeys. And within 3 years, we started to get courted, for lack of a better word, by investors who wanted to invest in the company. And at that point, we did have visions of being an international brand. We had ideas of really, moving fast with our first movers advantage. And every step of the way, every time we would go into these meetings, we'd walk out and we'd be really wondering, are we making the right decision? And I think we were blessed. We had the right advisory around us. And then we were fortunate. We did partner. We actually sold 60% of our equity in 2015 to Marca Holdings, who at that time was a company that you may or may not be familiar with, but they were a planned conglomerate that was publicly traded. And we liked the idea of being aligned with a big group that already had a stake in hospitality, that had a strong presence in retail, that had a vision for growth. And we felt that would really give us that additional advantage in moving fast and capturing our market share. So we did it. We took the leap of faith and we sold 60% of the company at that point.
All right. So was that from the standpoint of the domain knowledge and the larger space depth that they could bring to the table that you went in for this type of investment, or more in terms of the valuation and the money you thought you need to bring in at that point in time?
It was a combination of both. I mean, definitely in order to grow the business, we did need to have it infused with more capital. We needed to have partners that could bring also some expertise to the table. So at that point, you really have to ask yourself, am I what do they call it? A lifestyle entrepreneur that's just giving myself a job, or am I a strategist that's thinking about next level and growth? And there's no right or wrong answer for anybody. Some people are very happy being lifestyle entrepreneurs. They don't want to be employed. They just want a business that gives them a great lifestyle. But in our case, we had our eye on the ball with strategy and growing and becoming an international brand. And we felt the only way we could do it is by aligning ourselves with the right partners.
And how was it experience? Did it work out the way you thought it would?
Well, the story got more interesting because 2.5, 3 years later, the company that bought us basically ended up dissolving. But Monkeys, they're 60% to two groups. One is Evolvence Capital, and the other one is Hema Capital, which is a group in Saudi. Evolvence is based in the UAE, and Hema is in Saudi. So literally, we woke up. I mean, I'm being dramatic, but you wake up one morning and you have a brand new set of partners, and you're having to kind of go back and do the courtship again, and the getting to know you process again, and all of that.
Yeah, it's like seeing part of your cap table evaporate overnight and come back next morning and say, "If this doesn't exist, no, what do I do?" Right? So amazing. That's an entrepreneurial.
Anybody could have prepared us for that. That was definitely something that we didn't anticipate when we first initially did the sellout.
Absolutely, but the majority holding by somebody else didn't really bother you in terms of how the freedom it gave you to take the company, how we wanted to take the company, how we wanted to work.
We've been really blessed with fantastic partners in both scenarios, where they have given us executive decision-making ability and the carte blanche to grow the brand. And I think, nothing is more exciting than being a founder of a concept, being able to create that concept, just like your baby, equivalent to a baby scenario, and then still being able to cultivate it, grow it, and love it. Let's face it, the only way that the only way that you know how. So we've been fortunate that we've had that support along the way.
Wonderful. So before I go to Mona, I have a next audience poll question. Can you put up the question about who are all in the fundraising mode and what's the fundraising question?
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
No, this is for the so we want to know from you, audience, who are you and what stage of the process you're in. Are you angel round? And I'm asking this specifically because Mona seems to really be the very few of Mona. When I was going through your background, I thought we should make a case study out of your entire journey and put it out there, because starting with being an end of catalyst and going on to getting investment from Amda and all the way up the hierarchy to get multiple level funding. We'll talk more about that, but I see that there are people looking at angel funding, and there are also those, one person I guess has raised multiple rounds, and okay, so we have a few of them who are in the very early stages, what I can see here. Wonderful. So Mona, like I said, you've been doing a great Mum's World, and what you've done with it is a great case study for the region to how to build value step by step, and build value for yourself, bringing in from the most important part of this entire process. Because as we all know as entrepreneurs, when we go out there and do this along with other investors in the cap table, we create value not just for ourselves but for the larger ecosystem. And it's that process of exits that they get that enables them to invest more into other startups and other entrepreneurs and move forward. So I just want you to say a little bit about your fundraise process. I understand you were an Endeavor Catalyst, how that helped you in the first stage, and getting Vamda very early in your cap table. One of the most sought after investors in the region, probably the pioneers in angel investing in the region, and then on to much more senior funding going forward. So can you say something about that?
Sure. So essentially, I will comment before I do jump in, something that Saima said earlier. I remember 6 months after we started, we were approached by a private equity who was very interesting, and they wanted 55% of Mum's World. And for a business that had just started, that was in dire need of capital, you kind of flag that check in front of you. It's very compelling, very attractive, and it was very difficult to walk away. But now I look back, and this is one of the things I say is the greatest decision we made over the years, because had we not walked away, we would not be here today having this conversation. So I want to start again from the beginning. When we started the business Mum's World, our primary objective was to build a business that was going to create ecosystem impact and positive change. And we built this business with a true desire to build value in e-commerce, build value in the consumer's lifestyle, and build value for the Middle East region in general. And every decision we made was driven by that core DNA from the founders and the team. The seed round for us obviously was our money that was hard earned. Our sweat was already in the business from day one. Our A round came 3 months later, went live in beta in October, and then in January we raised $2 million. This was our early round, and we went out there, published the fact that we were raising capital, and we were oversubscribed very quickly. So we closed that round within, I think, 6 to 8 weeks, really, very, very short time frame. And the reason we were able to close it very quickly is A, we were pioneers. 2, we had a beautiful narrative to tell. And C, it was a business that, even though was 2 months old, already had some interesting momentum. So we had already launched the website within 8 weeks of us incorporating the company. So we were establishing our kind of psychographic of agility, and this is why we were able to close that 2 million quickly. Fast forward a year later, we went out there to raise a small $5 million round. Now, in today's world, where you have around 17 VC in the UAE, $5 million in the scheme of things is not a lot of money. Back then in 2012, or mid-2012, a lot of money, ecosystem. So going out there with the business that was very small business, for 5 million, when unlock that round. And the reason for that is investors didn't understand and didn't trust e-commerce. We eventually did close the round, and we closed it for $7 million. And we used that money to do one thing, and that is to create very solid, preemptive, unfair advantages that would allow us not only to widen the gap between us and any other competitor that was going to enter the market, but also to establish unique differential advantages that give us power over the supply chain. And that's what we did. And this is what allowed...
More about that?
So, unfair advantages include things like, today we have 250,000 products on Mum's World, around 5,500 brands. Out of these, around 25,000 are exclusive to Mum's World. So not only do we retail leading brands, but we are the exclusive distributors of some of the regions and the world's top brands, like Bugaboo, for example, Munchkin, Haba, etc. So we own the retail and distribution supply chain for these key brands. Another one is a private label. So very early on, with the richness of data that we were able to gather from these consumers, the Arabic consumer that we know intimately, we were able to go out there and create brands, our own brands that cater to particular regional needs that were unmet. Another one today, remember, we tap into 2.5 million households today. Arabic is our DNA, so Arabic is our primary point of entry. Saudi Arabia is our biggest market, so we come into the region with a very intimate knowledge of the consumer of the region and her unique psychographics. So these are the types of fundamentals that we were able to establish. Unit economics with our suppliers that we were able to lock in with, again, exclusivity early on, allowed us to go back again and again and raise capital from the strong VCs of the region. And we did go to what we consider to be the best VCs of the region. So we did go to WAMDA, we did go to Sweecor, to Precinct Capital, to KCP. So we went to all of the well-known regional VCs, and they kind of create your backbone as you talk to others. Endeavor, you mentioned Endeavor, so I would also mention Endeavor. Endeavor Catalyst was instrumental to our entire journey. We were the first women selected Endeavor business in the UAE. Endeavor comes with a wealth of access to resources, access to knowledge base, honest feedback, hard feedback. And so they were our best critic and our toughest critic, and among the best investors or the best partners we've had from day one.
Yeah, Endeavor does a great job. I've been an Endeavor mentor and interacted with entrepreneurs like you there. And I remember your name and material there as well. So yeah, they're a great ecosystem globally. So you mentioned knowing your customer. There's a slight digression, but say something about how analytics has really enabled you to service your customers better.
Sure. So at the end of the day, we're a technology company and we're a data company. So everything we do is driven by what the customer is telling us through the data that we have, from her demographic profile, from the moment she comes onto our website, and her psychographic profile, the types of products she looks at, the types of cross-sells and the upsells, how many children she has, what's her age bracket and income bracket. So all of that is is data that we're looking at on a daily basis. And keep in mind, our customer journey is a very exciting one because we reach the mother at the 3 months prenatal. So when she is at her most impressionable stage, information hungry. So before she's giving birth, 3 months before, she's information hungry, looking for products. She has a host of mandatory products, and we hold her hand all the way to the preteen years. And with every milestone, we talk to her in a different language, from the 0 to 2, the 2 to 4, the 5 to 7, the preteens, etc. She has different needs, and she has different requirements. And keep in mind that Mum's World is not only a transactional website, we are a community experiential website as well. And this is why we're able to host a lot of loyalty, repeat customers, and engagement on a community level.
Wonderful. So going back to the funding sequence, I think you raised about 9 million by the time you were done with your Series A and you're going into the growth stage. It's, what's wonderful to see here is that, investors in this region investing in e-commerce companies that first need to bring in market share, and not really, profitability is always a distant goal in e-commerce, as we all know. It doesn't happen in short periods of time. How did you find the support you got from investors in terms of supporting your market share, growing the market share very significantly, or you're actually creating a market, you're creating a space where there weren't too many players, I would imagine, in your space. You're creating a new category specialist type of e-commerce, and you're really bringing in a set of more physical shoppers on online, and then keeping them with you with the kind of service you're able to deliver to them, and the products you're able to deliver to them. So what kind of support did you get in terms of funding market acquisition as against looking at bottom line, and what kind of response? Tell us a little bit about that.
So again, the VC ecosystem was not sophisticated when we launched. It's come a long way, particularly in the last 2 years. And this whole premise that you have to be EBITDA negative for a long period of time is just unheard of. E-commerce is particularly scary because it's very cash intensive. There are a lot of touch points that have to be built properly. And if one fails, the whole customer experience fails, and that's expensive. And it's even more expensive when the ecosystem is not ready. And remember, when we launched Mum's World as the pioneer in vertical space, all the enablers did not exist. We did not have technology talent that was affordable or either readily available. We didn't have payment gateways that worked. We didn't have couriers that were reliable. So we had to create our own. Supply chain ERP, most of our suppliers didn't even have an ERP. So getting transparent inventory understanding, all of that we had to create from zero. And that's expensive, both from a time and a money. And so investors didn't get it. They saw this as a black hole with no kind of light at the end of the tunnel. So we really had to educate. And it was an uphill battle. And this is why the A round took us longer than it usually should. This is really why the B round, the WAMDA round took longer. But once you establish momentum, you can then tell a better narrative. Now, another thing that I want to also make a point on, Harry, is when we started Mum's World, it was fundamental for us to build a business that had unit economics that made sense. What are our gross product margins? What are our PC1? What are our net margins? What are our retention? We knew that we would never want to be in the market for constantly raising capital. We didn't want to do that for ourselves. We didn't believe that was creating true value. If you have to raise capital all the time, then you're not really creating value. There's something amiss in the value chain. And so this is why a very, very strict eye on our fundamentals, our unit economics, our retention of our customers, our gross margins, our category splits, all of that was something that we paid attention to very, very early on. And this is one of the reasons why we have been able to grow and scale and be from a unit economics, I would say be among the stronger ones in the region. Our private labels are obviously very profitable. Our UAE market is a very lucrative market for us. So we've proven that we know how to crack the code once we build the enablers that make sense for us.
So what I'm hearing is by demonstrating that your unit economics are improving with time, with more and more as the investment comes in, you were able to convince future investors that you could get even better and get to that holy grail of positive bottom line in a given time. Is that what it is?
I mean, for us, just to put it very, very simply, we were able to show very early on how our customer, just on one level, our acquisition and our lifetime value was incredibly healthy. We were able to acquire a customer very efficiently and keep her with us for, we're a 10-year-old business. Many of our customers have been with us from the very early age. So our lifetime value is incredibly healthy. And our ownership of the supply chain is also very healthy. And the last thing I will say, Harry, is there are a lot of profitable businesses that are very small. We were not, like Saima said, we were not interested in being a small company. We were building what we wanted to be the largest mother, baby, and child company in the Arab world. We were building the indispensable extension of a mother's life in the Arab world. We were here to build a very large organization that can cross boundaries of geographic boundaries in the MENA region and beyond. And for that, you need to invest for the long term. And
you've done that, Mona. So you're not just saying that you actually have demonstrated it's possible, and congratulations on that. It's a fantastic job done. So, one of the things that's, impacted life hugely in the last couple of years, of course, is the pandemic. And I just want to see what kind of impact it's had. So very quickly, how does the pandemic impact your business? It's an e-commerce business. So generally digital is done very well. So was it a good experience for you in terms of your business in spite of what is going on there?
COVID was one of the greatest and one of the worst periods of my personal career, I have to say. And the reason for that is because suddenly you have supply that is a gold mine, because customers are restricted in movement, and so they have to buy online. So you have your 4% e-commerce penetration for mother, baby, and child who are already buying from you, buying more. And then you have the 96% who normally would not transact online suddenly coming online because they didn't have a choice. So that was great. And literally overnight, I would say the March-April period being the peak, we had a growth in demand that was exponential. Now, what was happening on the other side? The supply chain fell apart. Just as the customers were unable to move, guess what? So could the suppliers. The suppliers were shutting down their operations. They were not able to move. Importing and exporting of products was limited. There was a lot of fear even with investors on capital spend. So you get bored, pressure, stop spending. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So a lot of, here's another one. Saudi Arabia for a month, the entire last mile ecosystem came to a halt. So we actually could not get orders to our customers. So it was an interesting journey. We definitely learned how to be more resilient and more creative than we'd ever been. And we survived and told many tales post it.
Wonderful, Mona. So we just did a little survey. I don't know if the result can pop up again, but I quickly noticed that we were asking the audience the impact of the pandemic on their businesses. Yeah, there it is again. So, there's an equal split between those who were badly hit and those who actually improved bottom lines. So this is the story. The story is depending upon which business you're in. Some of the business done extremely well, like most things digital, most e-commerce, and most businesses in the software space have done extremely well. So that's very clearly visible here. And yes, of course, many physical retail have been hit. Coming to you back, Saima, you are in a more physical business. You had these physical assets in different parts of UAE and other countries as well. And you were banking on children coming to your location to have fun. So how did the pandemic impact, and how did it really impact your business?
So sadly, Harry, I'm going to join the 26% that said that they were badly hit.
I can imagine.
That would definitely be something I would resonate with. Well, we had to definitely start cultivating a lot of resilience in our operations. We had to be more mindful of the impact we were having on society, not only now, but in the future. Again, it goes back to core values, which we obviously many times have to revisit in life. And we quickly came to the realization that despite being hit the hardest, we also had to think of things like, what about the value of our employees? And what about the value of just, like I said, the impact it has on society? So we hit badly in the UAE. We had to halt operations for almost 6 months. But I also found an interesting, perhaps a case study on psychology and sentiment during pandemic. So in some countries, for example, in Pakistan and in Saudi, we did quite well. In the UAE, due to government restrictions, we took a loss, we took a hit. One of the countries that really surprised me and I really wanted to applaud was Lebanon. Despite everything that they've been through, our numbers in Lebanon did very well as well. We're very healthy there. So I think that's also a very interesting realization that a lot of it is very much sentiment driven as well.
And you were telling me that your entrepreneurial instincts led you to create a new brand and a new business at that time. Tell us about that, CTZN.
So what was interesting, as you know, I'm also an angel investor. So just pre-pandemic, I invested in a cosmetic company that was founded by my nieces. And at the time, obviously, nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody knew upside down. So these clever millennials came up with a really beautiful line of cosmetics where they're vegan friendly, cruelty free, all and becoming more trending through the pandemic with all sorts of inequality issues, Black Lives Matter, things like that. And these girls had basically nailed the idea of all-inclusive makeup and cosmetics. What was an interesting thing for me to watch and observe was that during the pandemic, because they didn't have access to brick and mortar shops, they started aggressively going online, creating an e-commerce platform, along with a lot of citizen journalism and personal endorsements. The company started growing during the pandemic, which was really nice. And in the last 3 months, the company is now been able to launch their products in very well-known retailers in the United States, like Nordstrom, JCPenney's. They're coming into the region. So that was really a great experience for us.
Something goes this way, something else goes the other way. So that's how life balances, and that's a great example of the two happening at the same time. Coming back, Mona, you talked to us about Series A and up to Series B. So you raised a total of about how much? 70 million so far?
So we haven't disclosed how much we raised. I always say...
You haven't, okay.
I don't tell people how much money I have in my bank account.
6 rounds.
So we've raised 6 rounds. We've raised 6 rounds of capital.
Available data that I looked at shows somewhere in the 50 to 70 million range, so I will leave it there. But more importantly, it's all about how the whole thing progresses and where it is in terms of the value creation that's happened. And tell us a little bit about the last transaction where you actually come to a different way of looking at business come about.
Sure. So the Tamer and the Mums World transaction is a very strategic decision by us, and it came from a position of strength. Mums World has been the leader in the mother, baby, and child vertical space for the past 10 years, and we have been in hyper-growth mode. On the other side, Tamer is a 100-year-old legacy business. They're the largest pharmaceutical, healthcare, FMCG conglomerate out of Saudi Arabia. And they also trade in prestige and beauty products. We're going to see a lot of digital DNA and institutional giants leaning in massively together to benefit from each other in a symbiotic relationship. For our perspective, we want to tap into resources, not only capital resources, but institutional resources, infrastructure resources, to allow us now to continue our hypergrowth, expand into other, not only other regions, but also line extensions. And this will allow us to do so with hyper speed, more than what we've achieved to date. On the flip side, with Tamil, they want to again digitize, leveraging our DNA. So it's very, very exciting times for us. Resources now are more readily available, and you're going to see a lot more news when it comes to consumer features, consumer products and services, and again allowing us to, and I repeat it, become the indispensable extension of a mother's life. Through different extensions that we're going to be building in the next year.
And how do you see this from a board standpoint? You're again I know you continue to be the CEO. In terms of strategy, in terms of direction, the board control against your control. How do you see that panning out?
So that's a great question. So this acquisition was an exit for all of our shareholders. The founders will remain in the business in some scope. So I
understand more than $100 million.
So again, I'm not disclosing the value. What I will say though is the founders will have complete autonomy to continue building the business and our line extensions the way we have to date. So it's business as usual. The only difference is we will grow faster and further.
Sure. I know that those investors who got exits are quite happy. So considering you raised to 70, it should be a pretty good return on that. So, you know, the numbers are up in that region, I'm sure, but that's great. I understand yeah.
So look, I mean, it's very important, Harry, for me also as the founder here, because there were many things that we had to weigh when we made this ultimate decision. The one was, is this right for Mums World as a business? Is this right for the founders? And is this right for the shareholders who have put their faith and their trust in us? And when we talk about, is this right for the shareholders, it's not just the ones who came in on a seed or A round, but it's the ones who came in latest, you know, a year ago.
2018.
Yes, and the reality is all of our investors have walked away with very strong returns, obviously some more than others. None of our investors have walked away with mediocre returns. And most importantly, we're leaving with a legacy tale for the region that is a strong story for the vertical commerce, but also for female. And I am particularly biased for female. We are the only e-commerce female-led exit in the region. We were the first and the largest funded female-led business. I'm particularly keen on that because this opens the door for other females who want to have that confidence to kind of we seal the deal.
It is huge, Mona, particularly in this area which addresses the mother. So it's not just a woman on but also you've inspired many, and you'll inspire many more to get into the entrepreneurial ecosystem and create value for themselves and for others, I'm sure. So there are a few questions from the audience. I can see one question is about this is from TJ, one of our charter members and a very active contributor to a number of our talks. What is the contribution of influencers in marketing, you know, in terms of marketing on your marketing influencers on your sales? Yeah.
Is that for me or Saima?
Can you answer that?
Sure. So I will start by saying, if I wanted to be a lot richer, I should have been an influencer instead. So I would have been a lot richer as an influencer. So that's the first answer to the question. The second answer, look, influencer marketing has its place. for some businesses, not all businesses, and it has its place in terms of what's your objective. If your objective is kind of a short-term spike in volume and you've chosen your influencer very, very well, then you probably is a long-term value, intrinsic value purchase, then the influencer probably is secondary. And what does that mean? That means a lot of the influencers are driving deals, they're driving discounts, they're driving this ad hoc kind of short-term money saving, which for businesses like ours is not sustainable. Now, we at Moms World, as I mentioned earlier, we have over 2.5 million mothers with us. So we already have a community. Our mothers are our biggest influencers. Our mothers are our biggest advocates. So we actually leverage our community to create that virality and that stickiness. And we do work with influencers strategically. We have handpicked a few that are our partners, not short-term, but long-term. And they are our partners in narrative, not in only deal making. So our influencers are not deal drivers, they are content and narrative drivers.
Wonderful. TJ, would you like to ask your follow-up question yourself?
TJ needs to raise her hand so we can unmute her. Let's carry on with this.
Sorry?
Oh, yeah, she's raised her hand. 1 minute.
Okay, I will ask another question in the meanwhile. TJ is there. TJ, can you unmute and ask your question? Can we ask another question in the meanwhile, and we'll come back to TJ in a minute. So, how are you able to secure exclusive rights to several brands, Mona? Another question from an attendee.
So, Moms World has come over the years the go-to destination for global brands that want to tap into this regional consumer. This is a function of our longevity in the region, our understanding of the region, and the fact that we are the largest and have been around for the longest. So this is where we were able to tap into these brands very early on and establish relationships that continue to grow year after year.
Right. Please want to add something? Right. The one more question is about how you built your operation, the operation system, the automation, delivery tracking. Did you do that? You know, and in terms of having people like Amazon and Moon on the other side, were they competitors or with a different space? How did that work?
So again, Amazon and Noon are horizontal plays. We are a vertical play. There's a place for both. The horizontal play captures the full gamut of categories. It's all things for everybody. With Moms World, again, we are vertical. We're specialized with depth and breadth. We cater to the mother who wants the specialization, who wants, again, the breadth of the offering. We also, everything that we do at Moms World, all the services and the product offerings are about mother, baby, and child. And for like an Amazon type of audience than us. Having said that, of course, there is some eyeball and basket competition. So they do compete, for example, on the diapers and the milk and the consumables and the toys that are perhaps the certain type of toys. But overall, our mother comes to us again and again as the expert in the space.
Right. TJ,
I want to say, the mother, baby, and child category is $10 billion. $10 billion.
In the region?
Here, in the region. And the online is 4%. So you can kind of do the math on how large this potential market size is, and everybody's growing in it.
Fantastic, fantastic. Great choice of segment to address, I should say. Yeah, that makes a lot of difference, yeah. So TJ, are you ready with your question?
Yeah. Sure. Thanks, Saima and Mona. Really, honestly, awesome insights, both from a category perspective and also then commerce. perspective. I think both of you said in sort of different forms that you were a data company. And I'm curious, being on the marketing data side of the business myself, how do you see the use of that data in like some of the unique ways that you've applied that in commerce perspective as well, since you are calling yourself a data company?
Mona, you're muted. Saima, you want to go first?
I'll let
Saima,
Monica first. I'd like to hear what, because we're not so e-commerce based, so obviously.
So
that's what I
data
think, yeah.
drives everything that we do on the website. We capture everything from why a customer comes to us, where she came from, and what's she doing on the site, as well as her demographics and psychographics. And we use that data to talk to her, to engage with her, to cross-sell her, to upsell her, etc. So data is our number one driver of decision. Even our private labels that we have created are based on what customers are telling us on the site that she is not getting in the region, and there are missing kneecaps. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we are community on one side and we're e-commerce on the other side. Data also feeds our community. So we have our moms experts, we have Moms Academy, which are educational. It's an educational platform for our mothers and our community, where we talk to them about things that are hot and that are relevant. And again, all of this comes out of insights that we are gathering every day from our consumers. How you use data? Data is your richest asset. You use data to not only grow your footprint, but to create other offerings that can extend you. And this is what I mentioned earlier. We are always looking for new line extensions that we can launch based on data touch points that customers have shared with us. I hope this has answered your question.
Thank you, Mona. My good friend Sandhya Prakash, she herself is an entrepreneur in the new energy space. She has a question for Saima. She has a great note about CTZN. What is the geography focus and partner strategy for the world?
So the geography focus with cosmetics is, it's definitely an international audience, but right now our main focus is the United States, and we are now segueing into UK. But because we are Dubai based, we by default have been able to penetrate the market here as well.
Thank you. One last question before I hand it back to Fiza and Sizzly. This is from Ashish. This is a good question. Would Mums World look at opening physical stores? You know, the new phygital that's happening we see with Amazon and others. Mona?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, and I do not have an answer for you.
Okay. I'm sure it's evolving sometimes, and it will come as we speak. Wonderful. So I think it's time for me to hand it back to you, Sizzly. We have a couple of more minutes.
Thank you, Hari. We'll just run a final poll, just to also any women entrepreneurs in the audience do apply on TiEwomen.org. The finals, MENA finals, are happening at GITEX Future Stars in October, and there's a global pitch that happens where the winner will actually get equity free $100,000. So do tell your friends, neighbors, any women entrepreneur who you think should be a part of this. The great program, there's a lot of boot camps and workshops that is going to be inbuilt while you get there ready to pitch. You will also get access to one-to-one mentoring. So make sure you go to TiEwomen.org and make that application, or tell whoever you know that they should. And thank you ladies for the lovely session. Wish you both all the very, very best on your bigger journey. And
thank you.
Hari, thank you very much for moderating.
Sure, thank you very much. It has been a very interesting session. I'm sure all of you have enjoyed it. Give us your feedback as always. You'll get that from TiE. And Mona and Saima, we absolutely need you to be charter members in TiE if you're already not. So, we need this type of, and like Mona, I was very serious when I said that we really want to do a case study with your entire story, if that's fine with you. We'll get back with you on that, because there's a lot of learning that many can get from both of your stories. And particularly from a funding standpoint, there are a lot of questions that always get asked again and again, particularly in this part of the world, about each stage of the process. And there are not many who've gone through seed, Series A, Series B, and strategic exit of one kind. It's still not a complete exit. And so a lot of people would have want to know a lot more about this. It'd be wonderful to put this together and really see how we can, have more people benefit from your experience and the journey that you've gone through. And to both of you, wonderful to have the opportunity to speak with you. And I'm sure your Saima must be thinking of her next venture, and that few minutes she had breaks in between, and I'm sure that's coming up very soon in your serial journey. And Mona, your next big moves, and whether we see you physical stores or spreading your the current message in the larger part of the world. So all the very best for a great future, and thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much. Thank you, everyone.
Pleasure.
Thank you.